Please give a great box master stage welcome to Buddy Merriam and Catherine.
Thank you. All right, well, let's see. This is supposed to be some stories and some songs and stuff, and I've got a little bit of story to tell you. And we're going to go back to 1976, the very first Berkshire Mountains Bluegrass Festival, and that's where this festival actually started out at, over there at the Rothvoss Farm. Any of you folks ever go to that one?
Yeah.
A couple of you have. So you remember the lay of the land there. That was, I'll tell you, for me, one of the most sacred places in the whole world. I've been playing bluegrass for a few years and started playing the mandolin. Never gone to a bluegrass festival before though, and boy, they had a great lineup that first year with Bill Monroe, Lilly Brothers, Jim and Jesse, just some great bands. So I really didn't know what to expect. Packed up my Volkswagen bus and headed on up there, and boy, all the bands were just fantastic. I had never seen most of them live, and the whole festival scene was just amazing to me. How there was all kinds of different kinds of people there, and everybody just kind of got along. I guess I had a little hippie in me back then, and I had my Volkswagen bus, and I had my dog with me, and everything. And then on one side of me, there was an old couple. The gentleman had a white crew cut, and his little wife there, and they were really nice and kind of conservative folks. And I was in the middle there, and then on the other side of me, I had a little bit of hippie in me, but these folks were just wild and crazy, you know. And I was kind of fit right in there in the middle, and everyone just got along just great and helped each other out and everything. And things going fine. And boy, when Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys hit the stage, I just flat out had never seen anything as powerful as that in my life. He was just driving that band with his mandolin, and it was a great lineup of bluegrass boys. Kenny Baker on the fiddle, and Bob Black on the banjo, and Ralph Lewis on the guitar. And I think if nothing else had happened that weekend, it would have changed my life, you know. But about a couple hours after the show, I was just kind of cruising around the lot, and I came around this tour bus, and there was Bill Monroe standing there all by himself, holding his mandolin, just kind of looking up at the mountains and everything. And I thought, oh, there he is, you know. And I had heard a lot of things about him, and that maybe he didn't quite take to northern hippie type people, and it took me a while to get up enough courage to kind of walk up to him and shake his hand, and I told him how much his music meant to me, and what a great set he did and everything. And at this point I looked, and he was about 15 feet tall, and looking down at me, and I had a cheap old mandolin on my back, and he looked at me and he said, "You play that mandolin?" Which I thought he was asking me a question, and so I said, "Well, yes sir, I'm trying to learn." And he got real serious, and he stared right at me, and he said, "You're going to learn how to play that right." "Yes sir, I'm going to try my very best to learn how to play it right." And he gave me some great advice that I share with all my students and everybody. And he said, "You get good tone, keep good time, and make every note count." And then he said something, it was like something like, don't get too far out with it, but I know that Bill Monroe didn't say far out. But that was his advice to me. It was about the conversation, you know. I walked away on cloud nine. I couldn't wait to find my friends, and you're not going to believe who I just met. We shook hands, and he asked me a couple questions, you know, which I wasn't expecting. So that was great. And that evening, a wicked storm blew in, pouring rain, just teeming down, and eventually the main speakers shut down, and they covered those up, and most of the people of any sense took off at that time. But it was my first festival, and the music was just outrageous. And see, it was Jim and Jesse was up there, and Simon St. Pierre, the Canadian fiddler, was there, and both of those acts had Stuart Duncan. He was about 12 years old at the time, and he was sitting in with them playing fiddle and mandolin. And I thought that was pretty cool. Isn't that little kid played with fiddle like that. And then finally, the wind started blowing right on the stage, and they turned the monitors around for a while, and that was the sound system. And then they shut the monitors down, but there was still, I don't know, 30 of us standing in front of the stage there with the rain and the lightning coming down. Finally, Nancy Talbot, the promoter, came out, and she said, "All right, we're going to shut the show down, and everybody go for shelter, go back to your campsites or whatever, and we'll ride it out, and when the rain stops, we'll come back." And I turned around to leave, and bam, I got struck by lightning. And it hit me right in the neck, and I had a metal chain around my neck with a peace cross on it. And it fried right to my neck, it melted right to my neck. And I guess they say it threw me about 10 feet away when it hit me. My heart stopped beating a couple times. And this is all what people have told me. I don't remember much after that. I know when we were riding they had to tow the ambulance up the hill with a tractor because it was just all mud and just a mess up there. And finally, on the way to the hospital, I guess I must have said, am I ever going to be able to run again? Couldn't feel my legs, and they kind of pricked my leg, and I had some sensation in there, so they knew, I guess I wasn't going to be paralyzed. But when I woke up in the hospital room the next morning, about 10 hours later, there was 5 nurses all around me with the gowns and the gloves and the masks and everything. And I started looking around, and I was saying, what happened? What happened to me? And I guess I kept repeating that. And they were answering me, but they all had their masks on. And all I could see was their eyes, and they were kind of rolling their eyes. And I kept saying, what happened to me, Finally, one nurse lowers her mask and goes, lightning. And I went like, do I have all my body parts, and stuff? And then we realized that it had blown out my eardrums and fried the nerves in both my ears, and I lost all my hearing. So kind of not a good position to be in for a musician, to lose your hearing, And later on that afternoon, a friend of mine that played the banjo came by to visit me with a doctor that was at the site and rode in the ambulance with me. And my friend, I'm reading his lips, and he said, will he ever be able to play again? And he's like playing air mandolin. The doctor just kind of looked down at the ground and said, we really don't know. And boy, my spirits just went right down. And I was in the hospital for 10 days, and it took about 6 weeks for the hearing to start coming back. Did a lot of praying, went to healing people and all kinds of things to try to get my hearing back, and it just kind of came back on its own. I don't hear real good right now, but I hear good enough to play, and I'm really, really thankful for that. So after the hearing came back, basically whenever Bill Monroe would come through the New York area, the Northeast, I would go, and the first couple times I'd knock on the door of the bus, and someone would kind of look out, and they let me on. And I kind of just wanted Bill to know that I was all right, and I lived and everything. And we started becoming friends, and I had a big vegetable garden and flower garden, and of course Bill used to work his farm the old-time way without a tractor, with horses and mules and stuff, and we had a little bit of that in common. And then, he'd play his mandolin a little bit. And finally, one time I was on the bus, and somebody knocked on the door, and they said, well, could you come back a little bit later? Bill's visiting with friends right now. And it was me. And I thought I was just like the luckiest man in the world. Be a northern liberal type of a guy, and Mr. Monroe was pretty conservative. And but somehow we hit it off, and I believe he sensed the sincerity that I had for learning his music the right way. So I kind of got comfortable with just going and visiting with him, and then finally one time he said, well, play me something on that mandolin. was pretty nervous about that, as you can imagine, playing mandolin for the master. I mean, from my opinion, he was the best mandolin player that ever lived, and he created bluegrass music, and I was just the luckiest guy to spend time with him and learn from him. So whenever I played in front of him, I only played Bill Monroe tunes. And he would, he would sit there, his arms crossed, just staring at me. And it was really intimidating. And the music didn't come real easy to me. So he'd play a couple tunes, and then he'd just hand me the mandolin back, and I was supposed to play it exactly like he did, which I struggled with. So eventually I started saying, would it be okay if I recorded it on my cassette recorder? Yes, sir. So he'd maybe play through maybe a half a dozen tunes, and they were always tunes I had never heard before. A lot of them were ones that he had never recorded, or that he'd just written, and or some real old obscure ones that he had never gotten around to recording. And I'd go home, and every night I would work on that music, hours and hours and hours working on it. For about 15 or 20 years of my life, pretty much all I really wanted was to play as humanly close to Bill Monroe's style on the mandolin as possible. And I know a lot of Monroe-style mandolin players, but I'll tell you, when you hear Bill Monroe step up to the mic, you know it's him. You know it's not somebody else. Just, no matter how close you try to play. So that was the scenario for the longest time. Finally, one time he called up and he said he'd like me to come to Bee Blossom and play with my band. Another real great honor for a northern musician to get to go out to Bee Blossom and play. And the year I played in '83, Joe Val was there, and I guess we were representing the Northeast. And he had Kathy Calick and the Good Old Persons were there, and High Country from California. Same thing, he was really trying to help them and lead them and encourage them and everything.